It has been my pleasure to serve as president of the Society of American Archivists this year, and I am pleased to be here to share my thoughts with you today. As you can see, my title is Archives, History, and Technology, Prologue and Possibilities for SAA and the archival community. My topic allows me to connect some of my favorite things, archives, history, and technology, as a way to focus on digital practice, a priority programmatic area for SAA. I'm using digital practice as a broader term that includes all things to do with good practice for digital archives, preservation, and managing digital content. I prepared a shorter version for my in-person presentation during Plenary 2 at the annual meeting, but I wanted to take some time to talk with you in this somewhat longer version about approaches I believe will be helpful to SAA based on the kinds of issues and challenges that have come up during my term this year and last. I am focusing on digital practice, though the organizational principles apply to any challenge an organization tackles. Each of us needs to bring our best selves to the table to work together to address SAA's mission. In thinking about what to talk to you about at the close of an amazing and often surprising year, I considered what I bring to the table for SAA at this moment in time. We just passed 80 years for SAA and are looking ahead 20 to our centennial. This is a moment to look back on accomplishments and lessons learned, to reflect on where we are, and to look ahead to where we would like to go. We should push ourselves to play to our strengths. For me, I have a passion for archives and digital preservation, a love of history to inform the present and future, a deep and abiding interest in the implications of technology and technological change, a long-standing commitment to diversity and inclusion, diverse diversity and inclusion of all, an extensive experience with helping organizations of all kinds to build their capacity in new, evolving, and challenging areas. Today I am focusing on SAA as an organization and on digital practice as a programmatic priority that connects to many others. There are several topics to touch on as context for our discussion today. The first is technology and the implications of technological change. Many of SAA's priorities are driven, enabled, and/or informed by technology and the need to respond to technological change. It is important to acknowledge that technology is more than the software we may produce or use, and technology is not limited to computers, though we now often assume it is because computing technology is so pervasive. SAA has had a long and productive relationship since our earliest days with new and emerging technologies as evidenced in our literature, archives, and history. We have building blocks in place to help us expand our programs that are influenced by technological change. For example, our Digital Archives Specialist Training Program, our ongoing technical reviews, a venue for innovation at the Research Forum, the cumulative guidance and tools provided by SAA's groups, to name a few, with more to come. By engaging with the full meaning of technology, we broaden our opportunities. Technology includes scientific study. As technologies emerge and advance, developing the expertise needed to use these technologies increases too. Beyond very useful technology outcomes, our most common current examples being hardware and software, the knowledge, skills, expertise, and wherewithal needed to develop and apply technologies are as valuable to us and provide the means for technological advancement. Working with and around technology demonstrates that the people part, technology as socio-technical system, is the hardest part of technology. I often hear people talk about technological change as if they are expecting technology to stop changing or even hoping that it will. The problem-solving part of technology is the motivation for continuing to develop and evolve our current capabilities. Each new technological development leads to more innovations and ideas, and each may have unexpected as well as intended consequences. Archivists have tended to focus more on how to protect our digital content against technological change than on the opportunities that new technologies offer in advancing our practice in new and sometimes unexpected ways. The second topic as context is history. This year, as part of my SAA role, it was my pleasure to visit our National Archives, an institution where I worked for a decade, gaining invaluable experience working with electronic records. 50 years and counting for that program. I met with David Ferriero, Archivist of the United States, and featured presenter this year as at previous annual meetings. He and I discussed current priorities and favorite examples of past events that shaped and continue to inform our priorities. My visit provided a timely reminder of the necessity of and enjoyment in studying our past challenges and accomplishments. As these iconic statues that greet researchers at the National Archives remind us, what is past is prologue. Study the past. Every domain has its own way of going barefoot, like the fabled shoemaker's children. Archivists often fail to benefit from our own archives, history, and stories. By studying our earliest efforts to develop our digital practice, we deepen our understanding of our practice now, enable us to extend and adapt our practice more quickly as our needs evolve, something we have always done. We see people reinvent wheels all the time, partly because it's a human trait to preference invention, and partly through a gap in awareness about existing developments. History helps us to understand where specific technologies came from, to better understand how to use and evolve them, to understand the evolution of our principles and practice, and to know ourselves. The third topic is Archives and Archivists, the heart of SAA. Since 1938, the American Archivist, the major publication of SAA, has provided a significant portion of the record of our practice, a core piece of archival literature, and a snapshot of our professional history. In 2011, Paul Conway described the American Archivist as the oldest continuously published journal on archival theory and practice in the world. These excerpts from the editorial policy of the American Archivist substantiate the role of our journal in considering our practice and provide an indicator of our professional growth. The purpose evolves from be as useful as possible to reflecting our philosophy and theory, and most recently to specifically calling out technological developments as one category of attention. In applied fields like archives, literature is not a real-time view of current practice, but a combination of theory and practice that provides an overtime landscape of our core principles, our evolving priorities, and significant shifts in our practice. The online version combines the three topics: technology in action, enabling us to explore the history of archives. The benefits of online full-text searching across 80 years of our literature cannot be overestimated. There's a treasure trove waiting. However, the best outcomes are achieved when the strengths of both humans and technology can be leveraged together. The human-technology partnership. Here, I am focusing on the American Archivist. Another rich source of our history to explore is SAA's archives. Few issues that emerge for us now lack a prologue in the past, which continues to inform us. As a caveat, please note that the set of examples I drew from the American Archivists to look at the emergence of our digital practice is not intended to represent an exhaustive analysis, only to highlight the value and necessity of continuing to learn from our past. From the earliest volumes of the American Archivist, there are references to technology, new and emerging, helping us and hindering us. Technology in the broad sense, in the context of any aspect of archives that might be affected by technology. SAA members have demonstrated a commitment and ability to be responsive to technology, sometimes more quickly and creatively than at other times, but always game. As reflected in the articles and other content of the American Archivist, responding to technology often took the wise approach of first understanding, then figuring out how to act. It is true that we sometimes engaged in what could be described as free-floating anxiety and expressing more concern than action in anticipating the potential impacts of technology, but for the most part, we have been valiant. Examples of the kinds of technologies referred to include microfilming, manufacture of paper, building technologies for storage, rapid copying, facsimile transmission, also known as fax, and increasing references to automation. There was an early increase in references to automation and indexing that is often paired to punch cards. This 1967 example, Automation, Information, and the Administration of Archives and Manuscript Collections, Bibliographic Review, indicates that relevant work was building for some time before this publication appeared. A fun part of exploring the history of technology for me is bumping into gems like these quotes. Technological improvements have developed at a thrilling rate during the past few years, so that mechanical ingenuity is solving many of the problems for archivists. The only oversight has been a machine to determine what shall be saved. Even in 1938, we were wishing for automated appraisal. This quote from Vannevar Bush, a hero here at MIT and elsewhere, notes that instruments that are at hand, which if properly developed will give man access to and command over the inherited knowledge of the ages and the growing mountain of research, something that is true today as it might be in 1948. Another quote from 1949, "The day-to-day function of record making and record keeping has undergone a technological revolution," a term we often hear today, resulting in a mass production of records. This refers to advances in duplication methods. For more than 30 years, I have heard people note how new and different things to do with technology and digital records are. There is so much to be learned from the past. The first appearance in our literature of terms and concepts can help us understand the terminology we use now. Here are some interesting examples of first uses. Machine readable as one word in 1963. The 1967 symposium soon after described as to present to archivists, librarians, and researchers various aspects of the use of machine-readable records as research source. If we inserted digital records, we might queue up to attend this symposium today. Electronic records in 1984 by Tom Brown, an amazing appraisal archivist now retired from the National Archives. We continue to use the term electronic records. Digital records in 1982. In talking about the paperless office, an objective that was announced in 1976, though the next occurrence did not appear until 1996. Digital preservation in 1992. I was pleased to see that the citation was to a report on the future of digital preservation by Ann Kenny, co-creator of our Digital Preservation Management Workshop. And finally, Born Digital in 2002 by Michelle Clunan and Shelby Sannett. The Committee on Automated Records and Techniques, CART, was an early effort by SAA to grapple with technology and its impact on our work and the records we manage. Here's another familiar-sounding quote from a 1973 report edited by Meyer Fishbein, a pioneer we recently lost. "There is no consensus reached between those who believe that the advent of the computer, the increasing compression of records, and the difficulty of predicting research interest indicate a need for much more generous selection, the keep everything view, and those who regard the expenses and difficulty of adequate documentations as reasons for limiting the files selected for permanent preservation. These are issues we struggle with today." These three topics, archives, history, and technology, set the stage to discuss SAA's efforts to increase its organizational capacity in addressing digital practice. As organizations like SAA grow, it is possible to use frameworks like this organizational maturity model to determine the stage of development, to identify steps to get to the next stage, and to measure and communicate about progress. Overall, SAA is moving from consolidate, stage 3, to institutionalize, stage 4. Indicators that an organization is approaching stage 4 of development include demonstrated ability to build and evolve programs that parallel specified priorities, weigh options and determine when to say no, use projects to strategically develop programs and address new and evolving areas and issues. Digital practice is an example of programmatic development by SAA that is indicative of reaching stage 4. Organizational growth involves community building. For priorities to become an integral and measurable part of what an organization does, a critical mass of the members of the community around that organization need to be productively engaged in addressing a priority. Community is a key concept here that can be defined in different ways in different contexts. This year, as part of the program for our annual meeting, we have the Liberated Archive, a forum for envisioning and implementing a community-based approach to archives. Community in the context of the Liberated Archive Forum means bringing together archivists from around the country and members of communities in the Portland metro area and beyond to envision how archivists might partner with the public to repurpose the archive as a site of social transformation and radical inclusion. We all participate in a range of communities in our professional work and personal settings, and the lines are often blurred between communities through overlapping membership and objectives. Examples of my communities include the archival, digital preservation, and LGBTQ communities. In the context of community building for organizational development, as discussed here, I use the definition of community, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. Community members play a huge role in organizational development by joining, leading, contributing, training, mentoring, and supporting. The roles defined for technology development adapt well to community roles for organizational development because the roles reflect the accumulation by members of the skills, expertise, knowledge, and perspective needed for any new area. Individual members may play different roles in different contexts based on need, interest, timing, and other factors. For example, someone might be an early adopter as an organization develops its capacity to make progress on being more diverse and inclusive, and be a follower when it comes to developing expertise in digital practice. Or be a pioneer on one kind of technology in digital practice and conservative on adopting another technology. Communities and the roles within them evolve organically. You see here a picture of my digital preservation watch. I define digital practice as continually work to bring content and lessons from the past for the benefit of the present on behalf of the future. That's digital preservation to me. Digital practice is a comprehensive term encompassing standards and practice for digital archives, digital preservation, metadata management, and related activities for managing digital records, as well as the requisite organizational and technological knowledge, skills, and abilities to do so. For digital practice, SAA is moving from Stage 2, a project-based stage, to Stage 3, a program-based development stage. Some of the indicators that SAA is moving from Stage 2 to Stage 3 include: we have many projects underway, but it's not easy to connect them across SAA or to maintain momentum. There's rising interest across SAA in digital practice and a wide variety of activities. Our automatic response to new possibilities is not always yes, as it is at Stage 2. We are able to weigh implications and decide. Some of the examples of SAA activities and resources in this area are listed here. You will have seen that at the request of SAA Council, Mark Marienzo, a member who has held a variety of roles in SAA working on digital records and metadata issues, is completing a digital practice and metadata review to look at overlaps and gaps within these areas in SAA and at external examples that might be adopted or adapted by SAA. Here we're talking about digital practice in combination with diversity and inclusion. It's important to delve a little bit deeper on roles at this point. Both digital practice and diversity and inclusion are shifting from Stage 2 to Stage 3, and it looks a bit different for each of them. The shift from project to program can be complicated by the need for members to play their roles and allow the community to grow. During this transition, for example, early adopters are ready to shift from planning to doing and from talking to action. You'll have heard some of these examples in our recent discussions. At the same time, popularizers are working on raising awareness and other community broadening efforts to encourage new and less expert community members to engage. In tackling diversity and inclusion, the welcoming atmosphere that popularizers typically provide at this point in community development to new members is at odds with the discomfort that white members are meant to experience when confronted with the realities and challenges that are inherent in becoming more diverse and inclusive. Organizations need to do everything they can as they work through this transition from project to program, from Stage 2 to Stage 3, to increase the number of community members who are engaged. During this transition, early adopters need to continue to advance developing our expertise and capacity, and popularizers need to work to expand the base of members who are engaged. When SAA is at Stage 2, that typically means that dozens, possibly hundreds of members are involved. To achieve a critical mass that's required to shift to Stage 3, thousands of members need to be engaged, more than half of our 6,000. SAA is working on this transition for both digital practice and diversity and inclusion. We have reiterated and demonstrated our commitment to these priorities. There's a lot of work to do to address a lack of inclusion in who has digital practice roles, who is developing tools for use, and which institutions are active in digital practice. So far, digital practice has been largely undertaken by white institutions, for the most part by white individuals, and there are gender balance issues to address as well. We have work to do. SAA is engaged in a number of efforts to change where we are, and we need to ramp up and collaborate with other professional associations to make change happen sooner. Here I am referring to technical inclusion, because if access to technology is not inclusive, there is no way for digital practice to be. This upcoming conference, noted here on the slide, is another example of why it is so important for SAA to reach out to other professional associations and domains to address our shared priorities. Here we talk about collaboration as one additional aspect of digital practice to consider. What you see here is a bird's eye view of a round table populated by the possible professional associations we might collaborate with. These are examples of domains and the strengths they might bring to the table to collaborative efforts. The domains and strengths listed here are not intended to be exhaustive, only suggestive of the possibilities. One indicator that an organization is looking toward stage 5, externalize, is an increasing interest in capacity to collaborate. At early stages of development, working with organizations is more like coordination, nice but not necessary. Our invitations this year to professional associations to attend our annual meeting and the positive response we had is an indicator that SAA is ready to move toward a more collaborative future. Professional diversity and inclusion will continue to be a deep interest of mine. After peering back at our first 80 years, what about our next 20? How do we characterize the future we hope for and intend to create? This is what I see. We are included. SAA Archives and Archivists are part of a collaborative future with affiliated domains and professions. We are inclusive. Our members' policies, practice, collections, repositories are inclusive. We have diversity. Any exclusionary-ism is not okay in our community. We are technologically integrated. Seamless workflow, tools, technologies with archival outcomes integrated from idea to creation to discovery and use. We are ready and able to detect and be responsive to change, cultural, social, technological, and legal. How do we achieve the future we envision? We advance by pushing ourselves, playing to our strengths, and working together. Consider these 3 statements that were really effective in identifying next steps at a recent conference I attended. I will, we should, don't forget. These are some of my examples. I will engage in any discussion, however challenging, that SAA needs or wants to have. I will continue to contribute my expertise to help meet SAA's objectives. We should seek ways to collaborate with domains that share our goals and interests. We should work to build a critical mass of members who are actively engaged in our priority areas. Don't forget that our practice is only limited by our own decisions in establishing policies and our familiarity with the development of practice, our own creativity and adaptability. What are your responses? SAA is working hard to increase our organizational capacity, expand our community, and build towards the future we envision. Born and bred in Massachusetts, I have been a lifelong Kennedy fan, however complicated that has turned out to be. In his words, we must think and act not only for the moment, but for our time. This recent tweet captures my perspective very well. In an age of amnesia and rewritten history, one of the most radical acts of political defiance is to remember and to archive. We've got this. Thank you for listening and for an amazing year.